Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of What Did You Read Yesterday? As always, I am your host, Matt, and thank you to those who obviously know me already for joining me on this September experiment as I try and figure out how best to do content like this for YouTube. So, as promised yesterday, I have been covering / reading a zombie book, which is I Am a Hero by Kengo Hanazawa. Now, this is a book that has been on my radar for a while, though admittedly, one that I kind of shied away with at first because I didn't know what it was about. And after seeing this cover of this lone otaku dude with a gun on a bridge and everything whited out, I was just like, well, what is this going to be about? Unfortunately, I haven't really seen it on the shelves around just this first volume at some point, though I did get this one from a library, fortunately, because it's kind of a little bit hard to come by these days. And it wasn't until last year, actually, at Book Forum, when Farah Cigar, the Danish comic book company / store, launched a Danish version of this and actually had Kengo Hanazawa there in person, which meant that I got a signed copy of Under Ninja. That I really became aware of this book, and honestly, I am kind of kicking myself as a result of it. It could have been that in 2016 that, we were approaching a bit of zombie fatigue when this was originally announced. It could just be that most of my friends who read manga aren't necessarily horror readers. Whatever it might be, it's a massive shame because I really, really enjoyed this book. It has potentially one of the most iconic openings of a manga I've ever seen. It's very, very strange, and it's essentially just bolts on doors opening as you're introduced to the main character, a guy called Hideo. And you start learning that he's a bit of an odd duck, is what I will say. He has this massive fear of the occult and yokai, and he's clearly been influenced by his friends where he works as a manga assistant, talking to him about horror stories. And so in his brain, the whole world is out to get him and full of yokai and stuff that is going to hurt him, which obviously by the end of this book, when there's a full-blown zombie pandemic raging, put a little bit in perspective. The book overall is very interesting because it's got that good thing going for it that I think most zombie fiction does, in that it's a slow crawl into the zombie apocalypse. Everything at the start of the book is very mundane. It's just Hideo going to work, seeing his girlfriend Teko and their struggles and everything else. And honestly, his kind of like otaku-like obsession with manga and chatting with his colleagues about what he thinks manga should be and the idea of manga and his ideas of the industry. And he's very absorbed in his own process, his own thoughts, and also his desire to become a mangaka. And so all of these overwhelming things are kind of putting this pressure cooker on him, I think, and his role in society. And then that is all slowly bubbling up. You start hearing about people getting sick. You start seeing more and more people wearing face masks. You hear about the odd thing of someone getting bitten, and then you're like, oh no. It's not got that Zack Snyder, right, everyone's a zombie right out of the gate, Dawn of the Dead style thing. It is that classic slow build. And by the end of the first volume, whereas often happens in these stories, Teko, Hideo's girlfriend, is bitten and thus transforms into a zombie. And then it's all out panic, and you start to see the scenes of this zombie apocalypse unfurl around him as people, are brought into violent tendencies, as people struggle to survive, as you see in the streets cars hitting people and the drivers getting out confused and going, "Oh, you all right?" as they're set upon by zombies. All of that slow build is there, and where the volume 2, this omnibus, ends up is essentially, because I should mention this is a 2-volume omnibus, this is a nice 2-in-1. It ends up in a place where Hideo is on a train and he kind of thinks he's escaped, and he kind of thinks that this zombie pandemic is just isolated to the ward of Tokyo that he's in. He's like, oh, I'm going to escape to the country, it'll be fine. And as he's on this train and everyone's acting like nothing big is happening, the volume ends with, obviously, some of the passengers and some of the other cars be turning into zombies and becoming infected. And you're like, well, this train's not stopping at stations. Is the conductor also affected? Is this train going to crash? great tension point to leave this book off on. I cannot wait to talk about the second omnibus tomorrow, because honestly, this is a series that I think I'm going to have to track down, and not only in the Danish copies I have, but get these English copies from Dark Horse. I managed to actually pick up my own copy of Volume 8 on the weekend, and so let's see if I can grab the other 8 for reasonable prices. Let's see. Anyways, thank you everybody for watching this, and thank you again for giving feedback yesterday. Yes, the comments about showing more art in the books are definitely something I will do. I will look at setting up second cameras and figuring out how we can do this. And honestly, the reason I haven't flashed more of this book, despite how excellent I think Kengo Hanazawa's art is just purely because there's a lot of blood and gore and a lot of nudity in this first volume. So it is a seinen title through and through, and I need to figure out how to cut that kind of stuff in. I'll figure it out on tomorrow's episode. Until then, please let me know in the comments down below if you've read I Am a Hero, if you strongly recommend that I carry on with the series, or if you'd like to see something different. Anyways, until then though, folks, well, I'll be back tomorrow for another day of the September experiment. Be sure, as always, to read on. Thank you. Bye-bye.